Now I'm going to take you through the vintage compressor, which only comes in Ozone 7 Advanced. So I'm going to use that same piece of music that we used in the previous tutorial so that you can hear the sonic differences between the two different dynamics processors. So I'm going to come down and click the Insert Module button right here and include the vintage compressor, and I'm going to bypass the dynamics processor right here so that we can spend a little bit of time with the vintage compressor. Now, the vintage compressor is a classic emulation of a feedback compressor, and a feedback compressor is a very old analog style of technology, and it's different from a modern compressor because most of the digital compressors, like the dynamics module, are feed-forward compressors. In other words, they are looking at the input and adjusting the compression based on the input signal, whereas a feedback compressor, like the vintage compressor, is a feedback compressor. It's looking at the output instead. So what it does is give you a very gentle and highly musical dynamic control. And it does so by using these detection filters, where most analog compressors have a high pass or a mid-peak or a high shelf detection filter, but the vintage compressor is unique because it has a high pass, mid-peak, and high shelf detection filters. So let me show you how these work. I'm going to start playback on that same file that we used before, and I'm going to hit the Solo Detection Filter button. And now when you move these nodes around, you're going to be able to hear the frequency content of the output stage of the compressor and how it's going to respond to that output stage. So here's the high-pass filter. If we wanted to remove some of the low frequencies from the detection filter, we just move it higher in the frequency range. Or if we wanted to include more, we drop it down here. Then we can also change the mid-peak. So it lets you audition the frequency content where that detection is going to take place.
All right, I apologize.
Now we can turn off the solo detection filter, and then let's come down here to the standard controls, and you'll notice that there aren't nearly as many controls. This is a much simpler dynamics processor to use than the dynamics module. Since this is a vintage compressor, it's just not going to require so many controls to do the job. So you have some of the same controls that we talked about before. You have the threshold control, ratio, attack, and release. But then there are also 3 different modes of compression. There's sharp, balanced, and smooth. And let me show you how these work by using the gain trace. So when I click on the gain reduction trace right here, here's the trace, and it shows you how much compression is being applied to the audio signal. So just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to really increase the threshold here and get the compressor working really hard. So in the balanced mode, it balances between the sharp and the smooth modes. Now, if we set it to smooth, what you're going to see is a very gentle release, and you have more control over the release right here, but you can see that it's not nearly as sharp as the dynamics module would be. So if you wanted to get a little bit more modern sounding, like a digital compressor, you could use the sharp mode, where you're going to end up with fast releases. So you can get this compressor sounding a little bit more modern, but it's still more gentle than a standard digital compressor. And then we have the auto gain control right here, which I have that enabled, and we've talked about that before. And then since we are pulling some of the level away by applying some dynamics processing, let's increase the gain, the master output here. And I just think that this sounds a little too sharp. Let's take a listen.
I apologize unreservedly. I offer a complete and utter retraction. The imputation was totally without basis.
And let's go down here to the end of the tune right here. I'll just start playback right here. So let's listen to the smooth instead. See, the smooth mode just adds almost a radio feel. It adds a radio style compression. And then if you wanted to include a little bit of both of those modes, you could choose the balanced release mode. And then if we wanted to listen to the before and the after, we could come down to the bypass button, and let's just take a listen.
I apologize. I'm really, really sorry. I apologize unreservedly. I offer a complete and utter retraction. The imputation was totally without basis in fact, and was in no way fair comment, and was motivated purely.
See, to me, the vintage compressor really personifies the concept that the compressor is the glue that kind of keeps all the dynamics together, and the vintage compressor does so in a very gentle and invisible way. So that's the vintage compressor, and in the next section, let's talk about the equalizers.